Okay, Sefer HaMizvot Rambam, Misvot Aseh, positive commandment number Kav Zayin, number 27 is what we're up to. We're now in the midst of Misvot that are relevant to the Bet HaMikdash, the positive obligations of ours in the context of the Bet HaMikdash and the different type of activities and ceremonies that went on there daily. So here we have Mizvah Kav Zayin, Hisha Sivanu Lahasim Lechem Hapanim Lefanav Tamid. On the Shulchan, as we know, had 12 loaves of bread because they were open-ended in their receptacle. They were called Lechem Hapanim, the bread of face, so to speak. And for the bread to constantly be on that shulchan, on that vessel called the table, the presence had to be constant. The source is shulchan panim tamid. So the pasuk regarding this bread called lechem panim says it has to be tamid lefanai, in the presence of God on that shulchan constantly. Lahasim lechem hadash b'chol Shabbat. And you know from the Torah as well that the bread was replenished and substituted every single week. And it was frankincense, a type of spice that was put on top of the bread and eaten with it. And that the Kohanim, the outgoing Kohanim of that week's rotation, would, as they left, eat last Friday's bread. They would leave on Friday. They would eat the bread, the lechem panim presented on the previous Friday, and there would not be a moment that there was not any bread. So that they would actually describe the protocol of putting the old loaf as they're putting the new ones, as they sliding the old ones off. So there was always something on the surface of the shulchan. We'll find it the laws of lechem hapanim are Masechet Menachot. Mizvat Kav number 28. He sheseva kohanim la'aktir chetoret b'chol yom pa'amayim al mizbach hazahav. The mizvah of offering the incense, the ketoret, twice a day. Although it's twice a day, it's counted as one single mizvah. The Kohanim offered on the golden altar, which was the smaller mizbeach inside in the hechal, inside the Mishkan, the Bet HaMikdash, as opposed to the larger one of copper outside, where all the korbanot were offered. The one inside was reserved only for offering this ketoret, the incense, made of the 11 different spices prescribed by the Torah. And the source is, we say this more than once a day, this pasuk, v'yaktir alav aharon ketoret samim baboker b'hetibot hanerot. And Aharon would offer it every morning after the menorah was cleaned off. And so we have a morning and afternoon offering of the ketoret on a daily basis, including on Shabbat and holidays, every day throughout the year on the Mizbach HaZahav. So it's discussed in both Masechet Keretot and Tamid. The idea of ketoret. Of course, there's many other details to these mizvot that the Rambam chooses in Sefer HaMizvot not to go into. In Mishneh Torah, he goes into it in more detail. This is not a book of halacha. It's a book of framing and defining mizvot and their sources. So we move on to Mizvah Kaftet number 29. There's a positive commandment for fire to burn and to make sure fire is burning on the Mizbeach. Now this is talking about the Mizbeach HaGadol, the large copper altar, which is outside the Hechal, outside the sanctuary of the Bet HaMikdash, and for there to be a constant fire every day, all the time, on that Mizbeach. The source to this, we actually just read this this morning, because it's the beginning of Parashat Sav, Esh tamid tukad al hamizbeach. There has to be a constant fire burning on the mizbeach. Second. Okay. V'zeh lo yitachen ela b'ma shesiva b'hatmadat shum esh al ha'asim b'boker u'ben ha'arbaim. For us to actually accomplish this, right? We are not commanded to do something miraculous, so we have to do something practical. The only way this is feasible if we are constantly placing a fire, meaning burning, combusting something, which means the wood on the altar in the morning and the evening. That's the way it can practically be a constant fire. We have to keep that going. As it says in those two masechtot. However, in the tradition, they said of Torah Shebaal Peh, even though we know, and this is true from the time of Shlomo HaMelech and on, and really from the time of the Mishkan and on, that opening day, they'll read about in Tu Shabbatot, Parashat Shemini, there was a constant fire descending from Shamayim, and that is miraculous. It was a pillar of fire descended from heaven to the Mizbeach every single day, all the time. So even though that exists, but Hashem is not the one fulfilling a Mizvah, despite that, Mizvah lahabim min ha'edyot, that is a obligation and a command to bring mundane fires, so to speak, for us, in our meager, limited manner, to light our own actual fire and put it on Mizbeach. You're going to say, well, doesn't that seem so insignificant relative to the heavenly fire that descends every day? And the answer is no, because that's the one that we do. Hashem is not functioning the Beit HaMikdash and the Mishkan for his purposes. So let God do godly things. God does miracles. We do our things. That's the Misvot Aseh from the Torah for us to light the fire. That is now sharing Hashem's fire. So the Misvah of putting these certain logs and burning them every day on the Mizbeach is described in the Masechtot Yoma and Tamid. Mizvah Lamed number 30. He shenistavu hakohanim lahasir hadeshen bechol yom al gabeh mizbeach. Deshen is the pile of ashes that resulted from the constant burning, not just of the wood, but of the korbanot, whatever is offered on top of the mizbeach. Now you're talking about, you have to understand, besides the daily korbanot, korban tamid, that was offered on behalf of the nation in the morning and the afternoon, in the course of a day, there could have been many hundreds of korbanot, from sin offerings to donated offerings, nedarim and nedabot, that are offered from individuals on the mizbeach. So you're talking about a very, very active altar where there are many, many korbanot offered, and therefore, after they're consumed by the fire, there is ashes that are remaining, besides from the wood, a significant amount. And there was a mizvah in the Torah to remove that deshen. That's the pile of ashes. Interestingly, it's called the offering of the ashes. Really, you're just cleaning it off, but it's called the terumah of it. The source for this mizvah says, and this is also from this week's Parashat Tzav, he has to wear not his presentable Kohen clothing, just wears white clothing, cotton clothing, and he removes the deshen and he puts it in a separate place that's actually designated there on the floor of the Azara. Both the Masechet Yoma and Tamid speaks of this mizvah. Okay, we will stop. We'll stop over here. Amen. Amen.
Well, limit, no?